In this video, I'm going to walk you through two women's weight loss journeys. The first journey is the woman on the left. This is the journey 99% of women go through, sometimes multiple times, to try and lose weight and ultimately fail. The second journey, the woman on the right. This is what it actually is going to look like to not only lose the weight, but to keep it off for good. And I know this sounds a bit woo-woo, but become the person who keeps that physique for the rest of their life. Both of these journeys follow the exact same elements. So as we go through from start to finish, we will be following the same stages. However, the difference in success is the approach and execution of each stage. So we're going to jump straight in with the first stage, which is going to be the goal. Now, the woman on the left will follow a process something along the lines of this. She will wait for, to her, a significant time, something like January the 1st or 8 weeks before summer, run up to a wedding, holiday, something along those lines. Now, as the goal wasn't important enough for her to start straight away, she usually doesn't give it as much thought in actually coming up with the goal, and it's usually something very arbitrary, something like, I want to lose 10 pounds, or I want to be able to walk up the stairs without feeling out of breath. Most of the time, the goal will sound noble, but maybe she's seen it somewhere on an ad, like lose 10 pounds in 8 weeks, and thought, yep, do you know what? That sounds like a good place to start. Now, because this isn't an internal goal, when or if she achieves this goal, nothing's really going to change in her day-to-day life. Like, yeah, it would be nice to walk up the stairs without getting out of breath, but it's not impacting her on a day-to-day basis enough to give her that driving force to sustain past week one, month one, and get her to that end goal. As, well, quite frankly, she could just take the lift every day. Another example, like, yes, it might be nice for her on her birthday to look down and see 10 pounds off the scale, but if it doesn't happen, it's not the end of the world. I'm sure she's still going to have a great birthday. No one's really going to know. So it doesn't have the same impact. Whereas the woman on the right, she also follows the same stage where she does set a goal. Could be the exact same goal, by the way. It could be to lose 10 pounds like the example we had a second ago. But the process of arriving at that goal is completely different. The first thing is something or a series of little things, let's call them micro events, will have happened in order for her to come to the realization something needs to change now. For example, maybe at work she was asked to present on stage and she suddenly came to the realization how unconfident or uncomfortable she felt. Or maybe she finds a dress that she used to wear under a bed and she wants to get back into that dress. Not because of the dress itself, because the easiest thing would just be to buy the same dress in a bigger size, but because of who the person or the woman who used to wear that dress represents to her. And she wants to get back to that. Now, because this woman has a burning desire to achieve this goal, and this has some internal meaning and impact on her life, worth sacrificing for, she's not going to wait until January. She's not going to wait until life gets easier. She's going to make this a priority for her right now, and she's going to get started this week. Okay, now we have the goal. We're going to move on to the next stage, which is ultimately going to be just to start. Now, the woman on the left's process of starting will look, again, not exactly this, but something along the lines of, there's not going to be any real plan as per se, more just a set of rules and parameters of, I either will do this or I won't do this. It's very binary, very black and white. It's also quite clearly going to be designed for a short-term sprint. Even if the woman doesn't consciously know, subconsciously she knows the rules she's about to set, whether that's cut out sugar, cut out carbs, not see her friends for brunch for the next 3 months. Although she feels this is what's needed, she knows she's not going to be able to do this forever, and it's more going to be a race against time. And because she knows that deep down she's unlikely to stick to this, she doesn't believe she will get there. Now, she may go a step further in this stage and realize she needs help, but because that goal from the first stage wasn't big enough, she now sees the help as, right, I've got to pay for this cost, which is a very negative association to paying for something that doesn't really necessarily massively matter. So why would I do that? I'm just going to try and do this by myself. Now, when the Magic Monday comes, or January the 1st comes, or whatever it's going to be, she comes out the gate absolutely sprinting. Strict diet, hot on the workouts, saying no to anything she views as bad. And the first few days, or even the first few weeks, she will manage to stick to this, and she will start to get some results. The scales will massively drop, maybe 1 to 3 pounds in the first week, and because she gets all this feedback from the scales, she conflates this with meaning she must be doing the right thing. However, most of the weight is going to be coming from water weight. I'm not going to explain the science of it. I'll explain that in other videos, but unless she's been in a 10,000 calorie deficit, even if she was skipping meals, is very unlikely for the first week. So that 3 pounds has almost certainly not come from fat. So that's how the woman on the left starts. The woman on the right starts something like this. Now, it's important to note, a woman can start here on the right, but at this stage, she can then move to the left-hand side if she follows the same process as the woman on the left. What do I mean by that? She may have a very serious goal she needs to attain. She may have been told by a doctor she needs to change now, or been fed up of constantly being tired, unconfident every day and desperately want to change. But if she follows the same actions, i.e. tries to figure everything out on her own, come up with those set of rules we talked about where she's looked on social media, YouTube, pulled a few reels together, said, hey, I need to cut out carbs, skip meals, do training here, whatever it's going to be, or maybe using AI, she will then move over to the left and continue the same journey as that other woman. That being said, the woman on the right who sticks to this side will follow something along these lines. First, she will determine whatever she needs to do to get to her long-term goals can't be a short-term fix. There's no congruency with that. This is a long-term goal, which requires a long-term change, which requires a long-term solution. She then, just like the woman on the left, does her own research, looks things up on YouTube or whatever it's going to be. But the more she goes down that rabbit hole, which I'm sure you've experienced, the more uncertain she is. One person's telling her to do calories, another person's telling her not to. One person's telling her to do cardio, the other's saying to do weights. And the more and more she goes and looks into it, the more she realizes the incongruence in the importance of the goal and her, quite frankly, immature approach to actually approaching this situation. Like, think about it. What other scenario would you just try and figure everything out using social media or AI? If your child needed brain surgery, as a very extreme example, you could probably get the info on how to do that from the internet or from AI. But would you trust that? People can figure out how to do their accounts, how to build a house, how to cut their own hair. All of this information is online. But why do people not? She realizes she doesn't have absolute clarity on building a plan that will guarantee her success and doesn't want to waste time trying to trial and error everything she sees. So she finds an expert, someone who's helped women just like her get the results she wants. And when she finds that expert, they sit down and come up with a plan together that fits her life. And then when she has that plan and she gets started that week, she doesn't go in guns blazing expecting perfection. No one has ever woke up one day and flipped a switch overnight and just gone in with the perfect workouts, perfect nutrition, perfect habits, and just picked everything up from day one and stuck to that long term. Instead, they ease things over a few weeks. Week one, maybe she just focuses on getting 2 30-minute workouts, planning her meals and tracking her weight. Week 2, maybe she then brings in a step count and now focuses on getting more protein in. Now, am I saying this is exactly what she does? No, of course not. This is just an example, but what she's focusing on each week will obviously be different for different women, but it will be whatever is the biggest lever to pull all the time, which her coach will show her, but she's not looking to perfect every single thing right from the get-go. Now, this woman on the right might not see 3 pounds lost in the first week, but she doesn't really care. She's in this for the long run, and she's focused on the changes she needs to make to become the woman she needs to become, to lose the weight, to keep it off forever. This was never about how much she can lose in just the first week. And that change doesn't happen over weeks, it happens over months. And then we move on to the next phase. So once both women have started, they'll then move on to what's going to be the longest phase, and that's going to be the fat loss phase. Now, it's important to note, most women on the left don't make it out of that start phase. They don't make it past the first few weeks. I believe it's something like 60% of people, as an example, don't make it past January for their New Year's workouts. Now, for the women who make it out of that first phase and into the fat loss phase, this is where the real damage is done because they're following something that isn't designed for them. A couple of common ones are cutting carbs or fasting. This approach is not designed for women. Most of the studies done in this are done in men, and I've done videos showing the science of why this doesn't work, but whatever it's going to be, whether it's doing a ton of cardio, going keto, whatever it's going to be, if you are doing that to the extreme, it will be seen as your body as a stressor, and it will slow down your metabolism, number one. Second, the motivation will die off. Sooner or later, you're going to realize something will come up that your plan just isn't flexible enough to incorporate. You're going to have work trips, you're going to have weddings, family events, kids parties. You're going to have those weeks where you're working flat out and you're working 10-hour days and you just have to power through. And the reason these plans, these rules she's devised will not work is because They assume weight loss is logical. It is not. Weight loss, as I'm sure you will have experienced, is very emotional. And when your plan has no answer for life events that you know will come up, well, then you have to go off plan. And then it just becomes a vicious cycle of guilt and compromises. And the third thing is, these rules she's devised, they are not a solution. They are just tactics. For example, whatever diet she's chosen to follow is a tactic. Her diet isn't going to address the full picture. It's not going to address her metabolism, her energy, the fact she's sitting at a desk all day. It's a diet. It's going to give you some rules around what to eat. Now, yes, a solution does bring together and use different tactics, but used in isolation or just randomly, they're not going to work. It's like if you were to study a topic, but you just chose random chapters in isolation, you're not going to learn them together because they're all intertwined. And then when it comes time to do the exam or do whatever's needed, you're going to fail. Even if you know the chapters you've done inside out, you're still going to fail because everything is related. Weight loss is exactly the same. Weight loss is about the 24 hours in the day, 7 days a week. You can't just pick and choose specific hours, the couple of times you eat, the couple of times you do a workout, and ignore the rest. Now, the woman on the right, her fat loss phase is going to focus on coming up with a plan that's going to address the realities of the life she lives. She's not going to bury her head in the sand. She knows things will come up. She wants to be as prepared as much as possible for them. Now, it's important to note, the woman on the right, she will start, but she will not have a plan for every single thing that may or may not happen. However, as they come up, she and the coach she's working with, they will come up with parameters and strategies for her. A strategy for work events, for cravings, for those long days I was talking about earlier, for parties, for illness, and so on. And as she starts to develop different strategies, she will start to build her own unique system for her life. And that system can change as her life changes as well. It's going to be dynamic. And she's not always going to get everything right the first time. Let's take an example of maybe she has a work event and her and her coach decide, let's take in our own lunch and for the evening meal, let's just stick to a main and a dessert. However, when it comes to the time of doing it, she realizes it's a bit weird going to a work event and being the only person to bring your lunch in. And when it came to the dinner, she wasn't really fussed about the dessert, but she'd much have preferred to have maybe a couple of drinks with her colleagues. Perfect. Next work event, she now accepts that she's going to eat with everyone else for lunch. She's going to maybe use a portion strategy her coach gives her. And in the evening, she's going to skip the dessert and have a couple of drinks instead. Don't get hung up on that specific example. I'm not saying, hey, that's exactly what you need to do. This was just an example. But the point is, she accepts that she has a life she needs to live and that she needs to find a way to manage around that. The next thing to note is, unlike the woman on the left, this woman knows this is going to be a long-term journey. This isn't going to be a straight line to get from here to here with no hiccups on the way. There's going to be plateaus. There's going to be time her body adapts. She will change. Her routine will change. So her plan needs to be dynamic to incorporate that. An extreme example of this is someone going from 250 pounds to 150 pounds. The journey of getting from that 250 to 200 is going to look very different from the journey of getting to that 200 to 150. The workouts will change, the diets will change, the habits will change, things will have to shift. Getting a good step count in at 250 pounds is going to be huge. However, at 170 pounds, it's not going to have the same impact. And again, that's where that help and guidance really shine through in this phase, because what happens when the body adapts? What happens when there's a plateau? She needs to know what needs to be tweaked at what specific phase. And the last difference is kind of like the secret juice, which is the external accountability. Having a third party to be there and hold her to the standard she needs to be held to in order to achieve that result. Because as we all know, when we have invested, when we have skin in the game and have someone to tell us what we need to hear, not what we want to hear, we are infinitely more likely to stay on track. And then we have the finish line. Now, out of the 1% of women from the women on the left that ultimately make it here, the question then becomes, now what? She will think, perfect, I've hit my goal, now I can stop, now I can go back to all the things I've missed and all the things I've deprived myself on this journey. And we all know what happens next. Because she's felt so restricted for so long, when she has one taste of whatever it is, whether it's sugar or takeaway or not having to get up at 6 a.m. to do a workout she hates. And she then ultimately goes back to doing the same thing she was doing before, and unsurprisingly undoes all the progress she's made and ends up putting all the weight back on 10 times quicker than it took to come off. And then the problem with this is going forward, she's now developed a negative association with losing weight because, well, it sucked because she was doing it wrong, and then thinking, if I want to lose weight again, I'm going to have to do something along the lines of this again, which I just don't want to do. So she'll then have to wait till next January or next big special event to save up all that motivation and then be stuck in that constant loop year in, year out. Now, the woman on the right also gets to her goal, and she gets there a lot slower, but in a lot more enjoyable process. Now, no, I'm not saying this has been easy. This has taken a ton of hard work, a ton of discipline, but she's been able to enjoy the food she likes. She's been able to carry on with her own life and not having to spend hours every single day doing a bunch of cardio she doesn't want to do. But she also knows that she can't now just stop. She can't just go back to what she was doing before. It's like, you don't study, get a job, and then after 6 weeks think, oh, perfect, finish, and I never have to work again. Like, that's not how it works. You still have to keep showing up to work every week. Maybe you don't have to study as hard, maybe you don't have to prep for interviews, but you still have to show up every single week. So this woman on the right, although she's at her finish line, she knows the rent for that body is now due every single week. But the thought of that doesn't fill her with dread. In fact, quite the opposite. Because she's done this in the right way, she now has a positive association with her health and fitness journey. She enjoys that feeling you get after doing a solid workout. She enjoys the energy she gets from eating correctly. She enjoys the energy she has to play with her children and be a good role model. She doesn't think, oh, I have to work out for the rest of my life, or, oh, I can't eat cheesecake for the rest of my life every single night to mask the real pain. It's like, no. I get to challenge myself. I get to lead the life of the person I set out to become. Now, if you are watching this and you're fed up of being the woman on the left and you want to break the cycle, my question to you is, why are you still trying to do this on your own? How long are you going to continue denying yourself and denying your family the best version of yourself? In the caption below this video, there'll be a link where you can apply to be coached by me. Fill that in and I will show you how you can lose fat the right way and become the woman on the right.